Hello and welcome to our update here live and exclusive on ThePapare.com of the weekend's action at the Dialog Rugby A Division League. We're getting to the business end of this Dialog Rugby League, and it's going to be hotting up in the next few weeks. I'll tell you that much because we have some amazing matches coming up. We have two teams that cannot afford to lose a single game, and we have one team in third place that will want to do a number on both Navy and Havelock. So we'll wait and see on Navy and Kandy rather, and we'll wait and see how things pan out. But first, let's look back at the action that we had over the weekend. Friday the 20th of February, we saw a surprise result. Police travelling all the way to Ratmalana. They moved from their home base at Field Force headquarters in Timirigassia to the headquarters of the Air Force in Ratmalana. And that one thing about the Air Force ground is that the wind is really strong and it blows only in one direction. So you really have to know what you're doing and when you're doing it, and when you need to capitalize the big lead, and when you know that it's okay at halftime not to have a lead with you. So most teams, I think, use that wind at the second half. Not sure who won the toss between Police and Air Force, but Air Force had the wind at their back in the second half, and that's when their fly half scored the 20 points. A miraculous game for him, actually. He did a superb job for his team, kicked really well for territory, and they ran outstandingly well, the Air Force foreigners, and they are the ones who have been creating all the trouble for the opposition teams that they have been meeting. Air Force, one thing that they do is defend really well at as a unit, and that's something that's important for most teams to do. I think Air Force is probably one of the best structures in defense, although they haven't had the same sort of attacking quality and the star players to win their set pieces and things like that that they really need to do. So that's something that they need to look forward to. But this win will really give them a massive boost for the knockouts. It was a 44 points to 22 win, and despite the fact that Apisai Nankaliva scored in his inimitable fashion, he scored 2 tries early on in the piece and put Police 12-0 ahead. Everyone thought it was going to be one-way traffic, but it wasn't, and Air Force came well back into the game, and after halftime they completely shut Apisai down, and there was very little that they could have done to break that deadlock, the policemen, because the territorial game that was played by Air Force, particularly their fly half, was actually outstanding. So good to see him back, Charit Senivaratna, back in the fold and actually playing pretty well for the Air Force. He's been there and thereabouts for a while now, and his experience paid off really well. So Air Force will be really happy with that win against their Forces rivals, 44 points to 22. Then we had a game that was expected to be a grudge battle. It was expected to be a close, hard game at Longton Place when Navy visited CRNFC. You remember the Valisera version of this game. CRNFC came back really strongly in the second half and did a lot of damage to Robbie Malnick, who scored a couple of tries and almost ended up winning the game that they had conceded a huge lead to. But unfortunately for the Red Shirts, this time it was not about to be the case because it started off with a walk-in try for Nuan Hettiarachi. It was an outstanding try created by the forwards that was finished off by Hettiarachi, who joined the line beautifully at the back, and that really set the tone for the first half, because it was 27 points to 8 at the end of that first half, and it was 20 unanswered points almost by the Sailors that really saw off CRNFC. They couldn't come back into the game in the second half. They did manage to score a few points. They scored 12 points in the second half, so that took their total up to 20, but a massive 44 points with as many as 7 tries scored by Navy, and I don't think the CR coaches will be very happy with that defensive effort at all. They were being cut open out wide. They were being lambasted up front. It was really hard for CR to see any positives from that game, except of course maybe the play of Papi Farrell at number 6, and unfortunately I think they moved Arun Kumar to number 8, and he was not doing much from the base of that scrum, the former Isipathanin moving back into the number 8 berth. But I think Papi Farrell would have done a little bit more damage at the back of that scrum, because CR just couldn't gain any momentum off their scrums, and their lineouts also were a little disorganized. Eramasi Navari, I thought, had an outstanding game for the Sailors, and he was really devastating with the ball in hand, and nobody could really do anything to stop him on the evening. So that was something that CR will have to look at. Their defense on the big foreigners is something that was really suspect on the day, and especially their defense out wide in the 12-13 and 13-14 channels as well was something that they really need to work on. So Eramasi Navari creating a lot for Navy, and these good forwards and these good three-quarters running off him, and that was really all that Navy could do. Navy playing much better rugby than they started off the season playing, and if they play like this, Kandy had better watch out. Then moving ahead now to the Kandy versus Army game, that was expected to be a pitched battle up in Nithawala, a very, very difficult place to beat Kandy as any team that has played there knows, and this Army team was going to try. Definitely, they had some new players in their ranks as well, but unfortunately they'd lost the likes of Pio Tuai, Samuela Sangeva and Sanivilati Rambuhai. Some bad blood there as well because of the way they had been asked to leave the Army. That was a little bit of consternation on the part of the Fijians, but everything had been sorted out in the end. But they've got some new players and those guys look to inject some pace. But unfortunately for the Army, they lost one of those Fijians early on in the piece for second yellow card, and referee Pradeep Fernando seeing or not seeing, I'm not sure exactly what happened with that incident when he got his second yellow card, Colinia, because there was very little sort of interchange. He was making a nuisance of himself, Colinia, but Kotopongi completely play acted and fell to the ground just like a footballer, and I'm sure that the Kandy crowd don't want to see their biggest player, their strongest player going to ground against something like that. So that was a little bit of a hoodwinking of both the referee and his assistant Dean Imal, so that was unfortunate, and the match was reduced as a contest after that point because it was pretty close in the first 15 or 20 minutes, but after that Army just fell away. They couldn't play this Kandy side with 14 men, especially with one man out in defense at the back, so that was something that really cut them open. But it was a 37 points to 10 victory. But one thing that Kandy must realize is that they're playing very fast open rugby. They're playing a very unstructured band of offloading, long passing rugby, running all over the place. There's very little structure, and when they come up against teams like Havelocks and when they come up against teams like Navy who have good structure, then that's something that they will really need to rethink. And I'm not sure if they've got enough time to do that, or they've got enough personnel to do that. You've got good players scoring tries like Pongi, you've got players scoring tries like Oscar Uma and Christopher Clutie, and of course Fazil Marija being devastating at fly half. So those are the attacking weapons that Kandy have, but unfortunately for them, it doesn't look like they're able to weave them into any sort of structure. It's mostly the individual brilliance of these players that's coming through, and against a team that has a good set of forwards, then that's something that's going to hold them back a little bit, especially given the fact that one of their big matches, that's Havelocks, is going to be here at Havelock Park, and that's something they don't do well. They don't travel well, Kandy, and that's going to be an issue for Johan Taylor and the rest of his team. So watch out for that game, because Kandy have to win both matches and hope that they will be able to hold on to this title, because they're challengers for the title. At the moment, they're on 62 points, and Navy are table leaders on 63 points. But we have to note that Kandy have played only 12 games, whereas Navy have played 13. So they still have a chance to get up on top. But that does mean that Kandy will have to beat Navy at Nithawala, and in order to get there and do that, they will have to beat Havelocks at Havelock Park. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But the game on Sunday, 37 points to 10 in favor of Kandy, largely due to that red card early on in the piece where Army lost one of their main players in their Fijian, and unfortunate bit of play acting there by Pongi. I don't think that's what we want to see on a rugby field. That's why we watch rugby and not football, isn't it? But it was a superb effort at the end of the day. Some fabulous tries scored by Lavanga Pereira. Cutting the defense open was Fazil Marija, Clutie, Oscar Uma, all getting among the scorers, Pongi as well. So Kandy will be happy with that win. It was a convincing win on the scoreboard, but whether it is convincing in terms of structure is something that they will have to ask themselves. So going forward, we have a few important games coming up, of course, for these teams. Like I said, Havelocks versus Kandy coming up, Havelocks versus Navy coming up, Navy versus Kandy coming up in the upcoming weeks. So you have to keep it glued to ThePapare.com to find out what's going to happen at these games and who's going to challenge for the Dialog Rugby title. Don't forget that Havies also have an outside chance if they beat both Navy and Kandy, and one of those two teams slip up against each other. You never know what could happen in their centenary year as well. So that's what we're looking forward to, and that's the action for the moment on ThePapare.com, live and exclusive, bringing you the action of the Dialog Rugby A Division League. Don't forget to tune in on the weekend for all your live streaming action.